You're asking, wait, so you guys aren't anti-American and pro-Russian?
What are the anti-American positions of Jay Dyer? Or Andrew Wilson? What?
If you're telling me Jay Dyer's pro-America, hey, that's good.
Why are you not answering this question? What are the anti-American positions of Jay Dyer or Andrew Wilson? David,
what? Step in and fill the vacuum. So either Christians are faithful to their calling and get rid of the Enlightenment and Reformation presuppositions that they have. All of these Americanist people, everybody knows that we had Orthodox kings and the Orthodox Imperium, but they act like, no, what's sacrosanct is separation of church and state, meaning that there's no relationship between laws and society and God. So they're basically Baptist pietists because they basically submit to the State Department and do the Americanist version of what Christianity is supposed to be. Their first and foremost deity is America, like the Baptists, the Dispensationalists. The Constitution, America, religious freedom is number one. Where is this anywhere? Let's go to the first 1,000 years of Christianity or the scriptures. Where is this idea of religious freedom being the first and foremost hallowed, protected thing? It's not. It doesn't exist. It's all just assumptions, post-Reformation, post-Enlightenment, that everybody just assumes that, oh, well, we all know that. How do we know that? So where's this come from, the idea of that?
And I think that helps sort of reframe the focus. That we're not interested, even the monarchy. I am more monarchist and more monarchical than ever, my support for democracy. I think, really, I don't know, since I've become Orthodox, my faith in democracy or any sort of modern political orientation, could be fascism, could be socialism, could be communism, could be, whatever system that you want to think about, is essentially since the 19th century forward, since the fall of the European monarchies and the movement towards full modernity, right? That was the whole point with World War I. That's the end of the European monarchies. That is there's still sort of refuge, a remnant of the pre-modern world in Europe, and that's what World War I was about, is destroying that remnant of the pre-modern world and forcing everyone to get into these parliamentary, democratic systems. But as we see, that's a total failure, and so I'm all in favor of a return to monarchy. But how do we do that in America? Well, it's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to happen probably in our lifetime. So the idea of America becoming a monarchy, as I've seen some of the Orthobros online discuss, it's like, guys, about spiritual terms, we have God on our side. In a sense, it's not a fair fight. I mean, as long as we're not censored, how can we lose? We have the true church, we have the aesthetics, we have the tradition, we have the theology, we have the apologetics. We win. We win. It's just a matter of time. We're in a sort of nascent state. I was just prepping for today's stream. I was just trying to search for Protestant Catholic objections to the growth of Orthodoxy, and I wrote down typed out a few of what the continual themes I found. But it's not strong, guys. It's not strong. I mean, Joel Webbin's whole critique is that Orthodoxy isn't American. Well, it's about to be. Because Orthodoxy isn't about a nationality, it's about the people.
Russian national identity is not only about empire, territorial extent, it also has some big ideas attached to it. An ideology that somehow this territorial expansion is either progressive, beneficial, or positive. It's a myth. So under the Tsars, the ideology was this third Rome of the Russian Orthodox Church. Third Rome was in Moscow. I know this is news to you. I'll explain how it works. So there's the Rome we all know about. The Rome, that was Rome number one, the one where the Pope is. The Rome number two, according to the Russians, has to do with the Byzantine Empire, and that was Constantinople or Istanbul. So when that falls, the Russians go, ta-da, it's Moscow. Not really, but they used this Russian Orthodoxy and spread the Russian Orthodox Church back in the day deep into Eastern Europe. So when the communists get in, they're not spreading Russian Orthodoxy, they're spreading communism. The problem for Putin is today neither communism nor Russian Orthodoxy are marketable ideologies, so he's just stuck with being a really big place. That's where his little focus is. And Russia has a nightmare scenario. They don't always win these wars. They lose quite often, and the Mongol yoke, or the Yellow Peril, their terminology, not mine, is the 13th century when the Mongols just swept in and the Russian elites became tax collectors for the Mongols, an extractive role that has endured. You think about Russians, they extract resources, their own, other people's, but they're not known for producing wealth. It's just resource extraction. And this is some of the legacy of all of that one. And the Russians have also suffered devastating defeats to Napoleon in World War I and World War II that just devastated Western Russia. So they've had bad times. And in our own time, Putin is dumping all of his ordnance on Ukraine, leaving Siberia wide open to China's ambitions. So if he keeps the game up, he may well wind up with a Chinese yoke, and his nightmare will be there for him. The Chinese also have their own big ideas, not religious ideas or empire, but about civilization itself. The idea traditionally, the Chinese believe there's only one civilization, that would be theirs. It's based on Confucianism. That would be a world order unto itself. And that worked for them for a couple thousand years. And there are certain pillars of legitimacy that have endured, or probably originating this, but enduring one. And one is ethical rule. Well, that's gone for the Communist Party. Let's try the next one. Economic prosperity. Whoops, going fast. That leaves the communists today with territorial expansion. Well, that's ongoing, with territory incursions into India, South China Sea.
People often ask me the same question. Can Russia ever change? Can it ever become a normal country? Reforms don't appear out of thin air. They need a foundation, a shared idea of what's right, what's wrong, and what the future should look like. And here's where the problem begins. For centuries, Russia has defined itself not by what it is, but by what it is not. Not Europe, not the West. A proud rival that secretly depends on its decadent neighbor for everything, from machine tools to markets. After the French Revolution, Russian elites looked across Europe and saw nightmare. Kings beheaded, nobles bankrupt, new men rising from nowhere, bankers, engineers, industrialists. And they thought, if that's the progress, we want none of it. That's how the myth was born, the myth of the decadent West. A dangerous, godless place where order collapses and moral boundaries dissolve. A myth that still shapes how millions of Russians see the world today. I'm Elvira Bari, a writer born in the Soviet Union. In this video, we'll step inside that crooked mirror and see what Russians really mean when they talk about the decadent West. Here's our roadmap for tonight. The crooked mirror, how Russia projects its own flaws onto the West. The architecture of the myth, the stereotypes that define decadence, moral inversion, why believing in Western immorality justifies Russian immorality, the longevity of the lie, how a myth that fails again and again still refuses to die. And along the way, I'll share real conversations with people who sincerely believe the West is collapsing, even as they are watching it on the newest iPhones. Before we begin, if independent, fearless analysis matters to you, please take a second to share this video, like, and subscribe. You can also join my think tank, buy me a coffee, or support through PayPal or Super Thanks. Every contribution helps this channel stay free, independent, and answer to no one. And if you'd like to follow my upcoming novel, The Snow Queen Spring, where I explore how Russians see the West through this same distorted lens, you can subscribe to my newsletter using the link in the description. That's where I share early chapters, research notes, and the discoveries I can't yet share.
And yet, I haven't heard this as a mainstream position on the right, and you guys can be like, oh no, X blew this up long ago or whatever. But the Russian collusion operation, the IRA, like the thing that with Russiagate, the Democrats said got Donald Trump elected, it was significantly more involved with the astroturfing and creation of the BLM movement than Trump's election.
What?
And this is both well documented and incredibly well attested, and yet it is like not part of the popular imagination at all.
That can't be, because we would have heard something about that, no?
Right.
At least from conservatives, it's not as though conservatives don't have a voice anywhere, and we listen to a lot of conservative influencers and, well, not media outlets, but influencers.
Yeah, but yeah, so my thought as like a and the weird thing about this is this information is not new. It's been out there for a while. And I'm not here saying, because this is the perception I had historically. It was like, historically the perception I had is that the IRA helped both sides in that particular election cycle. They helped there were many instances in which two sides of a protest were both organized by the IRA, by Russia bonds, basically.
Does the IRA stand for?
I don't know what it stands for. I don't speak Russian. Anyway, so the IRA...
I've seen old clips of Antifa. They were openly praising Russia, but everyone would call out George Soros for funding Russia. For funding Antifa, but they didn't call out Russia for being behind it. Russia had all of these alternative media guys on, and they would promote BLM. They would call America evil, and none of the conservative right-wing alternative media guys would call it out. Where did you start to notice this double standard?
Yeah, I noticed it actually before I got fully into the kind of far right scene. So I kind of started off in press TV. So the Iranian channel, he kind of got me in with them, and I used to submit articles. And I submitted an article critiquing Putin, and they didn't publish it. And I was like, "What's going on here? Why, you guys are the free speech platform. You allow people to criticize Israel all day long. America's bad all day long." And then I critique Russia. And I was even doing it from like an anti-Zionist perspective. I was talking about like Putin's ties to Israel or something, and they wouldn't even publish that. So they wouldn't even talk about Putin's ties to Israel. That's how cucked they were, that the Iranians.
Russia is smart. Doesn't play the anti-Semitic playbook because it will be a huge contradiction for the anti-Nazi thing going on. So,
but the pro-Russian propagandists will use anything. So they'll look at trends. They'll look at whatever the trend is on X, and they'll just kind of tweak it. They'll tweak it to fit the Russian objectives. So if they have to do anti-Jew, they'll do it. If they have to be anti-Anglo, Putin's even made some anti-Anglo-Saxon statements. They'll play into the African grievances, the Muslim grievances, the Palestine grievances, the Christians. Pretty much that's their playbook, is to weaponize every argument to their advantage. But I guess the other point about NATO. Do you touch on NATO in the book, and NATO expansion? I guess you do, right?
Yeah, I do. I have like a subchapter about this. I debunk this narrative. So people have no notion, they have no context about like the regional parts of this specific part of our continents. They really don't know nothing of what's happening there. So this like NATO expansion really goes well because, like I did in my